Hello again, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. Now we'll have our second early career scientist of the day, Dr. Shaakir Shabirdar, who is a Marie Curie postdoctoral fellow at the University of Oulu in Finland. And he will be talking about winters under pressure seasonal snow. And I'll leave it away to Shaakir.
Thank you, Shiva. Thank you very much for that introduction. So what I'll be talking about is seasonal snow. Seasonal snow is where it all begins. Glaciers form from seasonal snow. We have ice sheets which form from seasonal snow. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about. And seasonal snow is under pressure. So why is it under pressure? Why is seasonal snow important? So that's what I'm going to talk about in my presentation today. So as Shiva said, I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Oulu and the University of Oslo. So snow, as you all know, it's an amazing substance, right? So it transforms the landscape. It just turns everything into a fairyland. And as we see from these differences in the pictures between summer and winter, it's just completely different. And snow is an important component of the hydrological cycle. And our hydrological cycle is not what we used to see in our high school as just a picture as just an arrow from the ocean to the land. There's a lot more happening. We as humans have been transforming the landscape through industries, through agriculture, and that is affecting the movement of water on Earth. And snow is a very important component of the hydrological cycle because of its properties, which I will be talking about very soon. And why is snow under pressure? It's because, as we have been talking about for the past 5 or 6 days, it's the increases in temperature. If you look at these two pictures right here, these represent the anomalies in temperature for the year 2022 and 2023. And the temperature anomalies are from the baseline period, which is from 1991 to 2020. As we see, the colors here represent the reds are higher temperatures and the blues are lower temperatures. So the differences between 2022 and 2023 is we see more reds all over the globe. But that's not the only thing. There are some blues as well. But overall, we see there is a trend which is an increase in temperature, both on land as well as on the ocean. So this is more recent. For example, this winter in February, we saw the temperatures were very high above the 1991 2021 average and also above the 2023 average. So there is an increasing trend in temperature, both over land and over the oceans. Now, to this warming, the water cycle responds differently in different regions of the world. For example, you might have greater melting, as Emma talked about, in ice sheets, and it's mostly because of, as the temperature increases, the capacity of the atmosphere to hold moisture is greater. And that's going to increase the processing of water in the hydrological cycle. In terms of regions where there is snow, we will have earlier spring melt as the spring warms, and the river flows are going to increase initially, but eventually they're going to decrease. And there are other aspects associated with this warming which are going to affect the hydrological cycle, but since we are only focused on snow, I'm not going to talk about those. Now, just to give you an idea, my interest in snow stems from my childhood. So I was born in the mountains in the Himalayas, right where you see that station location. So it's a valley. It's the largest valley in the Himalayas with an elevation of 1,500 meters. And then surrounding the valley, there are mountains which are at 4,000 to 5,000 meters. And there is a river that runs through the valley, which is one of the tributaries of the Indus River. So it contributes water to the Indus River. And most of the precipitation the Himalayas receive during the winter are from the western disturbances. So the moisture originates from the Mediterranean Sea, the Caspian Sea, and also from the Arabian Sea. And in the summer, it's a different picture altogether. We have the Indian summer monsoon, which transports moisture from the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. Now, as I said before, the warming is changing the hydrological cycle. The warming, it's not just only melting the snow, but it also changes the circulation patterns of the atmosphere. So what that means is if the circulation patterns are changing, we're not getting enough moisture or the moisture is transported to completely somewhere else. To show you an example, this is one of the ski resorts in the Himalayas and this is what it generally looks like, or what it looked like in January 2023. And this is what it looked like in January 2024. So there was completely no snow at all until January of 2024. This was very concerning for the people there and also for the water availability in the summer. We see similar pictures from everywhere. I'm sure you recognize this beautiful landmark. So I don't know, do you recognize this landmark from anywhere? Mount Fuji, exactly. So Mount Fuji, for the first time in 139 years since the records began, had no snow at all. So we are seeing changes, and we are seeing changes everywhere on Earth. And now, why is snow important? Why are we concerned with snow? Why do we not want it to melt at all? So snow, as you know, it's white in color, and being white in color gives it a very important property that it reflects all the sunlight that comes to it, and almost 90% of the sunlight. So what I show here in these plots is the albedo, which gives you a representative of the reflectance of the surfaces. So we see wherever in the northern hemisphere in January, wherever there is snow, you see high albedo, which is represented by these red colors. And if we talk about the summer in July, this completely changes altogether. So the snow disappears, there is not much reflectance that is going on. So snow is important for the global radiation balance. It regulates the climate. Another important factor is snow stores water, and its gradual melting releases it into the rivers, and it sustains the river flows throughout the summer. And also it recharges the groundwater. As we see from this example for the Indus River, snow melt is a significant contributor of the total runoff. Again, snow, another amazing property of snow is that it's a perfect insulator. So what I show here in these plots is there are two temperatures. One is the ground temperature, the air temperature, and then in blue you see the snow depth. Now we see as the snow depth increases, the ground and the air temperature, they just don't associate with each other. Even if there are like significant decreases in the air temperature, which go about to minus 35 degrees, the ground temperature stays close to zero. So snow is a perfect insulator, and it provides a thermal refuge. And this is important in northern ecology. And if we see, there have been studies as the snow cover duration decreases, which accelerates the extinction of local plants and could be animal species as well. But we talk about a plant species. And for animals, it was shown that as the snow cover or the snow depth reduces, the number of calves per 100 reindeer also reduce. So it's important not only for the ecology, but also for humans who depend on these snow conditions to maintain their livelihoods. And if you are interested or do you like skiing at all, I have bad news for you. And in the future, there is going to be less and less snowfall, so the reliability, and then you won't be able to ski any further in the future. Now, if we talk about the distribution and trends over the past few decades, we see that there are some regions, again, here the colors represent where there are decreasing trends in red and increasing trends in blue. So we see there are some areas where there are increasing trends in snowfall, but there are also majorly areas where the snowfall trends decreasing. Now this, as I said before, this is not essentially due to increase in warming that the snow is going to melt. It also influences the atmospheric circulation pattern. So you might have some regions where you get more snow, but there are some regions where you get no snow at all, as we saw in the previous example from the Himalayas. But overall, we see in Eurasia, we don't see a lot of drastic change. The snow cover trend does not really vary that much, but in the North America, about 40-degree latitude, there is a decreasing trend in the snow cover. Similarly, but we have heard about it. The warming, there is warming, there is warming, there is warming. And now here what we see is and from different sorry, from different products. For example, we have in situ, we have the models. For temperature, we see all of these products agree with each other. Like you have, if you take measurements, you take it from satellites, you take it on the ground. What we see is for temperature, you have these agreement on these different products, right? So, but with snow cover, we don't really see that at all. While we see that the temperature is increasing everywhere everywhere, almost everywhere in the world. We don't see the same trends in snow cover. So there are some regions where the snow cover is increasing, and there are some regions where the snow cover is decreasing. Correct. And to show you again, so for example, this is for snow. So we have in situ, which means we do measurements on the ground, and then we have these gridded products, and we have some climate model simulations. But all of them don't agree with each other in terms of snowfall. So you have wherever, for example, some regions in situ shows an increase in temperature. These other models or these graded products don't actually agree with that. So this is very concerning. So this means that we are not really understanding the processes which are affecting the loss of snow cover. And this is a very beautiful plot which shows that, I mean, so this shows the trend in snow water equivalent, which just means how much snow is there. So let's talk about that. So this just means how much snow is there and how do these different observations match. So for example, as the climatological winter temperature increases, we see that at a certain point of that climatological temperature, the response becomes non-linear. So that means that we are going to lose a lot of snow very rapidly at that temperature, which is around at -8 degrees. And what is important to see here is most of the people, which is about 2.1 billion people, they live in this climatological winter temperature regime. So as this temperature is going to go up and up, we are going to see drastic reductions in the snow cover overall. And the future looks bleak, right? So we see, if you look at these are model simulations from different models, and what we see in common, there is a red wave throughout. So that means there is going to be a decrease in snowfall everywhere. But there are some regions, especially, for example, if you see December, January, February, we have some increases in temperature. But what is more concerning is the spring, which is the March, April, and May, where we see a lot of snow cover is just going to be lost very rapidly. And so what am I doing about it? So as I said, there is a lot of mismatch between models and observations. So there is a need to improve these observations and to improve the understanding of the processes. So how does the snowpack lose mass throughout the winter? Everyone knows one, which is it just melts. But there is another important process, which is sublimation, which means the transition of snow from solid to vapor. It's much like evaporation of water, but it happens at all temperatures. So temperature, I mean, of course, at higher temperature, it's going to be more, but it still happens at lower temperatures. And snow, again, another important property of snow, it's very porous, right? So there is a lot of air inside the snowpack. And that air, as it moves out of the snowpack, is also a cause of loss of total mass of the snow. So what we do here is we use a combination of approaches which include stable water isotopes and the flux measurements to figure out how much actually the snowpack is losing water through the snow sublimation processes. And we do our measurements in the field where we have open ground and also in the forest above the canopies. And in addition, what we do is we have is laboratory experiments, because in the field, we can't always control the conditions. It's very different. But in the laboratory, we can control the conditions, put some specific controls over it, and then we can understand how the mass loss of snow is happening. So these laboratory experiments are going to be done at the University of Oslo, where they have this amazing facility where we can produce our own snow. So we are not limited to winter for snow, but we can get snow anytime we want. So that makes it easy for us to study snow, because one of the most difficult things about studying snow is the conditions in which snow occurs. It's very cold, it's difficult to maintain our instruments. So it gives us a good representation to understand the processes if we can do it in a controlled lab environment. So this is the project I'm working on currently. It is funded by the European Union, and it was previously funded by the Fulbright Commission. No, I love this so much, right? So, which was on the state of the Cryosphere report 2024. If you haven't taken a look at it, please use the QR code to download it. So, what is on the surface is we cannot negotiate with the melting point of ice. It cannot happen. The melting point of ice is 0 degrees, and it is 0 degrees. We can't change it, right? Even if we talk to it, it's not going to happen, right? So, we cannot negotiate with the melting point of ice, and that means we don't have enough time before the sun sets on us. And we need to limit warming by reducing emissions, and we have to take drastic steps to do it. And as I said before, snow cover, it creates this vicious cycle of where you lose more snow, you heat up the ground more, and then you lose more snow over and over again. So it's like a positive feedback loop, and it sets up a chain reaction. And at a certain point of increase in temperature, it's just going to non-linearly decrease, as we saw in one of the previous studies. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to take them. So if there are no questions, okay.
So what exactly are you studying, or what is your research question in your lab when you do produce snow in your lab?
Oh, so the research question is to understand the processes. So I were to summarize it in one sentence, I would say, what are the processes which lead to the snowpack mass loss? So we know there are two processes, melting and sublimation, but what I focus is on specifically sublimation of snow, which happens at the surface, and it also happens inside the snowpack, because snowpack is porous, so it's a mixture of air and snow ice, right? So that is the main research question, to understand the specific process or the transition of snow from solid to vapor.
So you talked a little bit about this sort of snow production lab that you have where you're measuring snow isotopes. What do those snow isotopes tell you?
Well, the snow isotopes will tell us about the processes. Now, how do the isotopes work? I'm sure you know what isotopes are, right? So we have different elements with different masses, right? So when these so in case of water, water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. And for hydrogen, we have mass 1, mass 2, mass 3. For oxygen, we have 16, 17, and 18. Now, when these mix to form this water, so we get water with different masses. So one will be slightly heavier, one will be slightly lighter. And now what we do is we measure the concentrations of these different types of water in snow, as well as water vapor, as well as the melt which is coming out of it. And now the distribution of these isotopes will tell us what are the specific processes that are happening. For example, the lighter isotope is going to be evaporated or sublimated quite easily as compared to the heavier one, which is just going to stay in the snowpack. Now, as we measure these changes as they happen, if we have an increase in the lighter isotopes in the vapor phase, we can pinpoint it to specifically sublimation. Now, as I said, in the field, it might not be very easy to do, right? Because there is always advective moisture coming in, which might have a different composition. But in the lab, we can actually control that, right? So we can specifically say that this is the amount of change which happens due to this phase transition of snow sublimating. Oh.
It was a little late. I was wondering if you have done any work with black carbon deposition from fires in the boreal zone and how that impacts the amount of snow melt.
Well, okay, that's a very good question, right? So again, let's talk about
So snow generally is white, right? So it reflects everything which comes to it, right? So there is 90% of whatever a solar incident radiation comes, it's just reflected. Now, if we turn it black, so it's not going to reflect, it's just going to absorb more and more heat. As it absorbs more and more heat, it's going to melt faster. And how much faster? I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you that, but because I don't really study that, but based on a physical perspective or the physics perspective, it's going to melt because it's going to absorb more and more radiation. And as the more and more radiation is absorbed, it's going to melt quite quickly. So that is what is going to happen as we have black carbon deposition from these forest fires, as you said, right? If there are no more questions, thank you very much. And